young mathematicians, and welcome to another week of HISD at Home with middle school mathematics. My name is Alyssa Howell, and I'm the Secondary Director of Mathematics. Welcome! Remember that all of the activities in today's lessons can be downloaded from the HISD at Home website. You'll go to the resources for middle school parents and students, and then look for this week's lesson under the PBL lessons that are listed. This week, we are continuing a project that we began last week. We are wrapping up our year and reviewing everything that you've learned if you are in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade mathematics. So let's review about that project before we start into the second week. Remember that the learning target for this project wants you to explain and describe scenarios about grade level mathematical topics. The objectives that we are focusing on these 2 weeks are the process standards. Remember that the process standards are broken into 2 sections. One portion of the process standards are the tools to know, and they are the same no matter if the student is in kindergarten or if you're a senior taking pre-calculus. The tools to know are all the same. Can you apply mathematics to problems arising in everyday life, society, and the workplace? Can you use a problem-solving model? And can you select tools and techniques to solve the problems? The second set of process standards are tools to show. This is how you tell us what you know. So one of the standards is whether you can communicate mathematical ideas, reasoning, and their implications using multiple representations. Another one is if you can create and use representations to organize, record, and communicate mathematical ideas. Can you analyze mathematical relationships to connect and communicate the mathematical ideas? And then display, explain, and justify mathematical ideas and arguments using precise mathematical language. These are the last 2 process standards in the tools to show process. So as we encountered our project for this 2-week session, is we're asking you, what have you learned in mathematics this year? So as we started our project last week, remember that we were asking you to create 3 products that best exhibit your understanding of the mathematics you have learned. You had all sorts of things you could choose from: a children's book, a comic book, a coloring book, video storyboard, guidebook, or even a graphic novel. The way that the project would be scored is given in the rubric, and it's kind of hard to read in this screen, but remember, you can always download it from the HISD at Home page. The criterion for the rubric are based on the process standards, and they're aligned to box 1, boxes 2 and 3, box 4, box 5, and box 6. And remember, as we dig into the project in a little bit more detail, each of those boxes have been plotted out for you. Within the criterion, you can exceed expectations, meet expectations, approach expectations, or just beginning to get there. Now, the example that I'm showing is from grade 6. So I looked at the grade 6 menu, and remember that it listed out several topics, and this is true at the grade 7 and the grade 8 levels also. Underneath each topic are 2 essential questions that have been listed out. The goal at the beginning of last week was for you to look at all of these topics and determine, what do you know best, and which topics do you still struggle on the most? We asked you to rank each of these topics on a confidence line. And when I looked at mine, this is what my confidence line looked like last week. This is important because we're asking for your project to focus on the top 3 topics that you understand the most. For me, it was expressions, equations, and inequalities, algebraic representations, and proportional reasoning. So the 3 topic pieces that I was completing this week came from those areas. So let's talk about what I want you to work on this week for May 18th. On Monday, we're going to start out with topic number 2 for me, because if you remember, I started work on topic number 1 last week. So I'm going to start generating my writing ideas. Remember, my topic is algebraic representations, and I need to use the 2 essential questions from the topic menu. Then I'm going to use all of the guidance from these pages in our guide. We're going to take a closer look at topic 2. And on that page, on page 10, you'll notice that we've listed out questions. In box 1, notice that it asks you to answer essential question number 1. And when I look at page 11, where it says consider reflections on topic 2, there's been a sentence stem provided for me so that I can answer essential question number 1. The same thing is true for box 2, box 3, box 4, 5, and 6. The questions are given on page 10 to help guide my thinking, and then the sentence stems are given on page 11 so that I can record what I'm thinking. The final step in the process is for me to start thinking about, what do I want this to look like? So we've given you a planning space on page 15. You can draw out pictures, you can write sentences. It's really to help guide you through the process. This is what we're asking you to focus on Monday, is topic 2. On Tuesday, you get to continue the work, but this time you're looking at topic 3. For me, it's proportional reasoning. And my 2 essential questions are listed: when and why do I use proportional comparisons? And how does comparing quantities describe the relationships between them? So my checkpoint on Tuesday is to do the exact same thing that I've done for topics 1 and 2, but I'll do it for topic 3. Notice again that this time I've gotten a page that says here's a closer look at topic 3. Consider reflections on topic 3. So I have questions, I have sentence stems, and then I have a blank workspace. Now that I've done the rough draft work on Friday of last week, Monday of this week, and Tuesday, on Wednesday, I'm going to start making my final draft. So on Wednesday, we're going to start with topic 1. And you'll notice that there is a page in your reference guide that you can use for your final draft. But you don't have to use that page. You can create your final draft any way you want to. You can use that sheet in there for your storyboard, or as you're going to see in a few minutes, you can create your story on a PowerPoint, or you can draw it out on sheets of paper. But on Wednesday, we're asking you to focus on topic number 1. On Thursday, you're going to create your final draft for topic number 2. And please remember that we're asking that whatever format you use for topic 1, that you do not repeat it for topic 2. So for topic 1, I actually created a children's story. So for topic number 2, algebraic representations, I may want to create a coloring book. This is Thursday's checkpoint. On Friday, You end all of your thinking. Your final draft for topic number 3 is what you complete on Friday. For me, this will be about proportional reasoning. And again, don't forget, whatever you've used for topic 1 and topic 2, we would like for you to use something different for topic 3. So if I've done a children's story and a coloring book, perhaps for topic 3, I want to do a video storyboard. So let's recap the project that it's taken us 2 weeks to work on. Students are being asked to create 3 products that exhibit their understanding of math topics from this year. Remember, your choices are that you can create a children's book, a comic book, a coloring book, a video storyboard, a guidebook, or a graphic novel. Last week, we asked you to reflect on the topics and essential questions in the math classes and graph your level of understanding on a confidence line. You began reflecting questions. Do you remember the triangle, the square, and the circle? You begin to answer reflection questions about those 3 topics, and we started drafting a response to essential question number 1. Now, this week, we're asking you to draft responses to the essential questions for topic 2 and topic 3, and then to create your final draft project for the topics. I started my story about Juan and Anne, and I wanted to focus on topic number 1 for me, which was expressions and equations. Would you like to see what I did? Let's check it out. The Mathematical Adventures of Anne Eighth and Juan Half. Knowing mathematics backwards and forwards, evaluating expressions and solving equations. The story was written by Alyssa Howell, but all images are by M.J. Jin. I'll race you to the house! My best friend Juan Half called out as he began sprinting towards his Tia Polly's house. My name is Anne Eighth, and every afternoon Juan and I walk to his aunt's house to await for our parents to get home. Tia Polly is great. While we work on our homework, she makes dinner and helps us when we get stuck. And she always has snacks for us. This afternoon, I asked Juan, I, I just don't know why our teacher, Miss Smith, kept going on and on and on about the difference between solving an equation or evaluating an expression. Do you know the difference, Juan? I don't know either. It just seems that we are finding a number every time, Juan agreed. But they aren't the same thing, exclaimed Tia Polly. What you are doing is the heart of mathematics, so this is very important. I could tell by the look in Tia Polly's eye that we were in for one of her great lessons in mathematics. Tia Polly loved mathematics, and she always enjoys helping us understand it better. In mathematics, you have to be able to find the answer, no matter what types of information you are given. Sometimes you're given all the numbers and information that you need. In that situation, you evaluate an expression. The final number you find is the result of all the operations and combinations of numbers in the problem. Think about how I make a pie. I lay out all the ingredients listed in the recipe, and then I add them together in the order given in the recipe. The recipe is my order of operations. It gives me the directions for how much and how to mix the ingredients. But think about what happens if I've lost my recipe. I know what I want the food to taste like in the end, but I must figure out what I might be missing from my ingredients and how much of each I need. This process is like solving an equation. As I think about what I need, I go through each ingredient one at a time and work backwards. That's why, in this situation, I go backwards from my order of operations or recipe. In mathematics, just like cooking, you need to be able to do both: evaluate expressions and solve equations. I think I get it, I said. If I have a problem like 3 plus 4 times the quantity of -6 squared, then I have all the ingredients of the problem. So that means, oh, John, and then Juan jumped in. So that means we follow the order of operations to find the answer. 3 plus 4 times the quantity of -6 squared is an expression, and we evaluate it. But, I kept going, if we have a problem like 5 plus x equals -11, we're missing an ingredient. This is an equation, and I have to use the opposite of the order of operations to find the answer. Exactly, Tia Polly gleamed at our understanding. She added, and don't forget, when you evaluate an expression, where do you start? Oh, I know that. We start by doing anything in grouping symbols or parentheses, I said. Perfecto, Tia Polly responded. So, where do you start if you are solving an equation, Juan? I think since it is the opposite of the order of operations, I go the other way. So, to solve an equation, I start with addition or subtraction, Juan shared. Tia Polly added, That's right, Juan. We use our zero pairs to start with addition and subtraction when solving equations. And if there's no addition or subtraction in the problem, we move up to solving the equation with multiplication and division. I think we earned some pie, Tia Polly. Juan grinned. Oh, you do you? Yes, I shouted in agreement. Okay, stated Tia Polly. Well, if you want some pie, you'll have to tell me what you know about fractions. We rolled our eyes. Oh, Tia Polly, you never quit, we exclaimed in unison. So, how did I do? Did you enjoy my story about Anne and Juan and their Tia Polly? Tia Polly's full name is Polly Gonzalez, just in case you like math jokes. So let's analyze my story based on the different aspects of the project that I was asked to address. Did you see how I answered the questions that are posed in boxes 1 and 2? Now remember, my topic was expressions, equations, and inequalities. Your topic may be different, and if it's different, then it has different essential questions. My essential question number 1 that I was trying to answer is, why is evaluating expressions and solving equations the heart of mathematics? Your question will be different. But let's talk about what I put in my story. Did you hear Tia Polly talking about the heart of mathematics? She even says those words, that evaluating and solving is the heart of mathematics. So I'm trying to explain why I think this is right. And it's because we need to be able to find answers either backwards or forwards. It depends on what type of information we're given as to whether we'll evaluate or whether we'll solve. And we've got to be able to do both since we're all good mathematicians. So that's how I tried to address the questions that are prompted in boxes 1 and 2. Did you see how I tried to address the questions in box 3? In box 3, we're asked to address essential question number 2. Now remember, for your topic, it will be different. For me, it was asking, how do I know where to begin a problem? So I added this in when Anne said she knew how to evaluate an expression. She wanted to start at the top of the order of operations by using parentheses and grouping symbols, and then doing the rest of the problem. Tia Polly asked Juan, well, what happens when you solve an equation? And Juan correctly told us we start the order of operations backwards. So this time, when we solve an equation, we want to start with addition and subtraction. And in fact, Tia Polly even reminded us that when we start with addition and subtraction, we want to use our zero pairs. That was a way for me to sneak in some extra vocabulary that I know, and I want my teacher to know that I know it. So remember, it's a good way to sneak in some extra vocabulary. But this is how I addressed box 3 by answering essential question number 2. Did you see how I addressed boxes 4 and 5? Now in boxes 4 and 5, we're supposed to talk about potential misunderstandings. And for me, that's basically how I started my entire story. Because when Anne and Juan first start talking about their math, they notice that it all just looks the same. They're all just finding a number in the end. But Tia Polly helped them to understand that there is a difference between evaluating and solving. So even though the very final answer looks the same, it's just a number, how we got there is what's important. How we get those answers is the true mathematics. Ha! That's the heart of mathematics, like Tia Polly said. The other thing that boxes 4 and 5 are asking us to do is it's looking to see if we know how to use mathematical symbols and academic language. So, did you remember? I put into my problem an expression. I also put into my story an equation. So, I'm showing pretty good use of mathematical symbols. And my academic language, we already talked about how I snuck in the words zero pairs. But I also tried to highlight my use of evaluating an expression, solving an equation, and order of operations by highlighting them in special colors. That helps my teacher to see the words that I'm focusing on, but it also helps to show and illustrate the important points that I'm trying to make in my story. So that's how I tried to address the questions that were posed in boxes 4 and 5. Now, let's look to see how I addressed the questions in box 6. In box 6, as I looked back and I reflected on things that I have to know backwards and forwards, I tried to link the idea of evaluating expressions and solving equations to a real-life application. And guess what I did? I tried to tie it to cooking. Because sometimes I follow a recipe, just like the order of operations tells us to do. But there are other times that Tia Polly talked about that she didn't have the recipe, and she was trying to figure out what she had to put into her food and how much of each she had to put in there. So that was my real life application and my reflection on what it means to evaluate and to solve. That one goes forward and the other goes backwards. The other thing was I tried to address what's next. I'm not sure if you remember back to last week, but one of the things I wondered is if solving equations could get harder. And so at the very end of the story, you might remember that Tia Polly asked the kids to talk about fractions. Oh, and that's what's next, is can I solve equations or evaluate expressions? That includes fractions and decimals and all sorts of things. So that was how I was trying to address the information in box 6. Now, this is always a very good practice. What I'm going to ask you to do next is once you've got what you think is your final draft, is to go back and look at the rubric and check to see if we've addressed all of the issues in the rubric or all of the things they're asking us for in the rubric, and to think about how would you score yourself. So let's look very carefully and let's think about the story that I wrote. And let's start with criteria 1, real world application. So, did I demonstrate a fluent understanding of the topic, or did I just show a conceptually broad understanding of the topic, or just a procedural or routine understanding of the topic? I think maybe I met expectations on that category. I showed a conceptually broad understanding of the equations and expressions idea. So I think I would be okay. I did do real world applications. Because remember, I talked about the cooking and the recipes. So let's look at the next criterion, explain and justify. Now, this is asking me if my work precisely explains math essential understandings. Was I precise? Was I specific? Was I just general? I think maybe I could have done a little better in this area. I think I maybe just beginning or approaches for explaining and justify. So if I didn't do too well on that area, what could I do to make it better? I think I gave an expression and I gave an equation. If I went back and added and working out the expression, evaluating it, and I added a piece where Juan solved his equation, then that could help maybe boost up my scores in the explain and justify criterion area. That would probably be a good thing to do. So I would ask that you continue on and look at how did I do with the problem solving? How did I do with representation, graphs, and tables? Wait, what? Representation of graphs and tables? I didn't even have that. I need to go back and do some more work on my story because I need to see if I can put some representational graphs and tables in there. And then the last criterion is to analyze and communicate. So again, it's always a good idea to look at the rubric once you finish your final draft, because you'll find out that may not have been your final draft. So I want to thank you for joining us for the past 2 weeks and working so hard on your stories. I really hope that you'll share yours, and you might have to do that by having your parents help tweet what you wrote. Perhaps even take a video of you reading parts of your story. The handles that your parents can use so that we can see your work are given on the screen. But I would love to see what you wrote. Hope you have a great week. Thank you for all of your hard work, and I'll see you next week.